have a sign-up sheet, but before we get to the sign-up, we have a couple housekeeping pieces that we need to address. We need to re-refer 3 bills. Senate Bill 1251, which is the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission Interstate Compact, and Senate Bill 1272, which is the non-resident violator compact. Both of those need to go to transportation. So there's a motion, and it's been properly seconded to re-refer Senate Bill 1251 and Senate Bill 1272 to transportation. All in favor, please vote aye. We have to vote our committees. Okay. You want to do a voice vote for just this one? Would it help you, Jonathan, if we just did this one on a voice vote, so you don't have to go back and...
Well, the problem is they're not on it.
Sorry. It will make it faster? Okay. This momentary pause is to make things faster. Thank you, Jonathan.
So if you want to grant a proxy, what you do is pick who you want to send it to, and then you just send it and you can vote.
It's super fancy. It really is amazing.
And you come back and
Can you blank that one out, Toby? Yep.
Jonathan, you tell me when you're ready.
Sorry.
It's good it's on these highly controversial compacts.
Toby, you just got to go on that one.
say again?
Just voice vote that one? Yeah, I can't make that one come up.
Okay. So we are now going to voice vote. So getting back to Senate Bill 1251 and Senate Bill 1272, there was a motion, and it was properly seconded to re-refer both of those Senate bills to the Committee on Transportation. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so those unanimously are re-referred to transportation. Okay. And then Senate Bill 1270, which is the Ohio River Basin Commission. The request is that we re-refer that to Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources. Or Ohio Legislature. Is that a substitute motion?
There you go, Toby. Toby. Toby.
The motion being made and properly seconded. All in favor of re-referring Senate Bill 1270 to Agriculture, Conservation, and Natural Resources, please signify by saying aye.
No, you can vote that one.
Oh, no, voting. Okay, now we can vote aye. So hit your button. Okay, I don't have to close it up. Do you close it up? Okay, so the bill is re-referred unanimously. Okay, so first up is Senator Spruill. We have Senate Bill 960 and 961. Welcome, Senator. First time to P&E.
Yes, bless your heart. How you doing today?
We're great.
Great. Senate Bill Approvals is 960. It's just a cleanup from adding the option of pre-processing. What it does is that it just provides that if the General Register can opt to expedite the counting of absentee ballots by return mail. Probably right now, absentee ballots, they come, then they go into a container. And then they wait selection day. But there's a contradiction there, because right now, it says they allow the sealed ballot envelopes to be open. They're open, they may be processed and sent to the machine. So what's the difference if they have a concealed ballot right now? The absentee ballot that comes in is also concealed. So why can't they also be open if it saves time to register? They both concealed. And that's what it's saying, is give them the option to do that.
Okay. Does anybody in the committee have a question of the patron? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak on behalf of the bill? Is there anybody, are you speaking on behalf of the bill? Okay. Senator Spruill, we have somebody stepping up.
I'm going to support.
Welcome.
Madam Chair, my name's Tracy Howard, I'm President of Voter Registrars Association of Virginia. We do support this bill. We see this as a housekeeping measure. It would allow the processing of these ballots, but not the counting of the ballots prior to the end of election day. So we do support this bill.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak against the bill? Any concerns?
Move to report. Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 960. All in favor, please vote aye. Okay. It looks like the bill reports unanimously.
Trump, I think I'm gonna like being in the
See,
Senate.
you're gonna like it. And you're gonna like B&E. You have a good bill.
Right after 23 years, Lord Jesus, thank you. Next one, I'm sorry about you, I didn't do that.
That's okay, we welcome your appreciation.
961.
Okay, Senate Bill 9, I want to direct the committee's attention to Senate Bill 961, absentee voting, rejected absentee ballots. Go ahead, Senator.
961, this bill will allow one person representing each political party to write and sign a statement for the cause of rejection of absentee ballots. Currently, the law requires that a majority of the officers write and sign such statement. What happens, let's say you got a large precinct, all the precincts, and they are not sure. Then the majority of those folks in that particular precinct, each one got to come down to the registrar's office and they majority rule. And let's say we're saying let one person from each party come into the registrar's office, roll the ballots, and they can look at those, that can save them time. Now, these bills are not being put in by no party. These are being put in by asking to be put in by the registrar's office. I want to get that cleared up. Not being by no party. The registrar's office asked me that, what they were saying that, why can't they have one person from each party come in to the registrar's office at that particular time? Instead of having, let's take my precinct, Georgetown precinct. You got 7 people, majority got to come in your precinct, his precinct, come in and go to those ballots. Why can't you have one person in each one of those, each party come in to go down to ballot to verify why they should be rejected? That's all it is.
All right, that makes sense. Is there anybody in the committee who has a question of the patron? Is there anybody in the audience, I see him coming, who wishes to speak on behalf of the bill? Thank you, Tracy.
Madam Chairman, the Registrars Association also supports this bill. See it as a housekeeping bill for the pre-processing of ballots. As they come in, it would be a simpler matter to write the rejection letter at the time if that ballot is not up to the material omission standards of the Department of Elections. So we do support this.
Okay, thank you, that makes sense. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill?
Move to report. Second.
Okay, the motion being made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 961. All in favor, please cast your vote aye or nay. Okay, and it passes unanimously.
2-0.
You're 2-0, well done.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next on the list is Senator Obenshain, Senate Bill 1105 and 1254.
Madam Chair, if I could start with Senate Bill 1254. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, right now, we have statutory provisions that permit the Department of Elections to cause to take place post-election audits of the voting machines. And across the country, states are adopting mandatory provisions requiring risk limiting audits of voting machines. And increasingly, of course, we're moving towards the optical scan machines. And a lot of people who put their vote, their ballots, their paper ballots through, are concerned that those be counted accurately. And concerns about the accuracy of these scanners and machines, I would submit, raise questions that undermine or have the potential to undermine voter confidence in the integrity of our elections. And what this bill does is it conforms Virginia to this growing number of states, and I believe that there are 34 states right now that require some form, and mandatorily require some form of post-election audits. Colorado's the most recent. It just this year, past year, mandated risk limiting audits statewide, beginning in 2017. California requires this for new voting systems. And what this bill would provide is that on a rotating basis, that and randomly localities and precincts be selected for these audits, but that each locality be audited at least once every 5 years. And this, I would respectfully submit, is a bipartisan, nonpartisan measure simply to increase voter confidence. This is an audit that is endorsed by the Presidential Commission on Election Administration and Verified Voting, and it provides transparency and confidence that these machines are accurately counting votes. There are 2 technical amendments that I believe Council has that I would ask committee to undertake consideration of, simply adopting the term of art, risk limiting audits, and also changing the reference to ballot scanners to voting machines.
Okay, would someone like to move the line amendment?
Yeah, maybe a minute.
Having been properly moved and seconded, all in favor of adopting the line amendment, which includes the term of art, risk limiting?
There are two amendments, Madam Chair.
I'll do them one at a time. Or I'll do them both together. The first line amendment being risk limiting, assuming that everybody who's in support of the first one is going to be in support of the second one. And the second line amendment is strike the words ballot, scanner, and insert voting. Having been moved and properly seconded, all in favor of adopting the 2 line amendments, please vote aye. Signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, so now we have the bill with the line amendments properly before us.
Madam Chair, I'm just trying, if I can ask a question. I'm just trying to read with all the marked up language. Doesn't the first sentence require that all of the machines in the state be audited, and the second one seems to qualify that?
It does require that they all be audited, but on this rotating random basis. The audits are to be conducted annually, and every machine in the state shall be audited at least once every 5 years.
But, Madam Chair, but the way I read this, I mean, the first sentence seems to say they're all gonna be audited annually, and the second one says not annually, but every 5 years. I mean, I just think the way that the words are structured, the sentences are structured, maybe they're logically inconsistent.
Well, we can go back to my 8th grade English, and we can diagram the sentence, but I think that the first sentence says that the Department of Elections shall conduct a post-election audit annually of the ballot scanner machines in Virginia. That's a general direction. And then it goes on to more specifically state the manner and frequency for each machine in the following sentence. I mean, if there's a better way of expressing that, I'm certainly open to that. I mean, I'm not wedded to council's
I would just say,
wordsmithing.
if I may, I think it's clear enough that you have a general statement, and then you have the narrow qualification, because it is still the case that the bill intends to require an audit of all the machines, just not all the machines at one time. It would be done randomly, and each would have to be done once within 5 years. So I'm comfortable with it, unless maybe Council Meg, would you have anything to add?
Madam Chair, I think your assessment, Nancy, under open change about the general statement and then the clarifying statement is correct. The first sentence is saying there's gonna be this audit that happens every year, and then the second sentence is explaining how the locality selected for the audit will be chosen.
Madam Chair,
Senator Evans?
not to be too nitpicky, I just wanted to ask a question. On that first sentence, it says, they shall conduct this post-election audit annually of the ballot scanner machines in use in the Commonwealth. Why doesn't it just say, shall conduct a post-election audit annually of ballot scanner machines in use rather than the? Does the imply that it's all of them pre or Senator
Well,
Dees?
that's kind of the way I read it. It doesn't make
I don't think that changes the substance of it. I would, unless council has a different view, I would accept that as a friendly amendment,
So
If you want to make the friendly amendment,
a declaratory amendment.
right,
Yes, but I hear.
declaratory amendment.
On line 4, I move a declaratory amendment to strike the word the new language the
Yes,
on line
please.
2.
a new generation of Hardaway Marxisms.
That amendment is noted.
Okay, so that line amendment is before us, and we need to adopt that. Is there a second for that friendly and declaratory line amendment? Okay, it's been properly made and seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. So now, with the 2 line amendments and the friendly declaratory line amendment, we are, Senator Deeds.
Madam Chair, is there a budget amendment that accompanies this bill?
I don't believe I have a this.
You don't have it,
I don't either.
we don't have any idea of how much it would cost to do these audits?
They're being done, and one of the advantages of these, and there are people here who can probably speak more artfully to that, but one of the advantages of these risk limiting audits is they're cheap, they're not time consuming, they're not expensive.
And just for the committee's information, there was no fiscal impact and no request to go to finance.
Well, there's not one, on the machine, it doesn't say there's no, it just doesn't have one. It doesn't say there's no fiscal impact.
That's
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Thank you, Tracy.
Madam Chairman, once again, the Voter Registrars Association is very much in favor of clarity of our voting machines and in voter confidence. We are in favor of audits. We would, however, remind you that there is a cost to the localities associated.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Okay, just, in my view, it's a really critical operational standard. I would suggest the committee adopt the bill. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry, Cameron.
Sorry, and Senator, didn't mean to catch you off guard. Cameron Sassen, General Registrar of Fairfax County. I just wanted to, this bill, it is fantastic that it would provide the opportunity to actually audit machines, make sure they're working properly. Fairfax County does have some concerns over where the cost would come. If it's a requirement to do all machines, Fairfax County has almost 600 ballot scanners. So auditing all those would be a significant cost to the county. So we would like to figure out if it is all machines or just a portion or what those specifics are. But we support the premise of it. Just want to know a few extra details.
That's all right. I'd be happy to respond to
Senator Obenchain, please.
that. It is all machines, but it is not all machines annually. So Fairfax County would run the ballots through a 25 or 120 machines each year through essentially a default pre-checked ballot scanner in order to audit those 120 machines annually.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on Senate Bill 1254? Properly before the committee. Is there a motion? The motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 1254. All in favor, please vote aye. And opposed, same sign. Okay, the bill reports unanimously. The next bill is Senate Bill 1105.
And Madam Chair, I don't know what your policy is with respect to carrying bills by, but this afternoon we received some concerns expressed about how Senate Bill 1105's intent would be carried out. And I have some thoughts as to how some of the changes can be made if this bill could possibly be carried over without burdening the committee. I would ask that, otherwise I'll present.
I would be happy to carry it over because I think it was more efficient and you're more prepared to do that next time, that's fine, because we've had a few other similar requests. So the committee just will have to be prepared for the next two meetings to perhaps go on a little longer. But that's
My
fine.
apologies, those concerns
Fine.
came up today, and
That's
I'll
fine.
get amendments to council well in advance. Thanks.
That's fine. Thank you, Senator. Okay, the next person on my sign up, which I have lost in my file here, pardon me. Oh, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm afraid I've done something else to it.
No, I just have a messy pile. No, yep. You're up. Senate Bill 864.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This bill came to me from one of the circuit court clerks in the 15th Judicial District, and currently under 24.2-106, to appoint an electoral board member, it takes all of the judges in that judicial district to sign that appointment letter. In the 15th Judicial District, for an example, and this is very true in rural Virginia, the 15th is comprised of Caroline, Essex, Hanover, King George, Lancaster, Northumberland, Richmond County, Spotsylvania, Westmoreland, and the city of Fredericksburg. And you've got about 8 or 9 judges that sit throughout, and that may not be right, but you got 7 or 8 circuit court judges anyway that sit in that judicial district. And they've got all come together to sign this form to appoint that electoral board member, and it's just hard for them to do it. So what this bill would propose is that the chief judge or his designee. And so what I would suspect you would see is if you've got an electoral board member that needs to be appointed for King George County or Caroline County, whatever judge presides over that county would be the one who would probably sign the form to appoint that electoral board member, and the chief judge would make that individual the designee. Did I make it too complicated? Because it really is.
It's really clear as mud. No, you made it very clear. Thank you.
I don't know if anybody supports it or opposes it or not. It comes from home, and actually it made a lot of sense, so I brought it.
Okay, is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patrons? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chair, I got a question for the patrons. How in the world do you manage to get 7 or 8 judges in the circuit?
That's a good question for courts, isn't it?
I think I misspoke, probably only like 3 or 4, but it still takes a lot of trouble. No, we do. We've got big caseloads, because of Stafford County, with 140,000 people, Spotsylvania's got 120,000 people, city of Fredericksburg. We've got at least 7 or 8 circuit court judges, I think. Big dockets.
Okay, now, in favor,
In favor.
welcome again.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We would like to speak in favor of this because in our own circuit, the 26th Seventh Judicial Circuit, Bradford, Montgomery, Pulaski, With County, Giles. We have 5 circuit court judges. It takes more than a month to get around that circuit for our appointments. The only issue that has been brought up with this particular bill is the lack of definition for the designee, and we suspect that the designee should be the circuit court judge that sits in the locality, which is due the appointment of the electoral board. It would be very, very fun if the designee would be the general registrar. However, we think that it's
Fun
best
is a term of
left
art.
that's perfect. It would be best left to the circuit court.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? Is there any discussion? Okay, a motion is in order. Okay, the motion has been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 864. All in favor, please vote on your machine. Okay, the bill passes unanimously, Senator Stewart.
I'm sorry, what?
It passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Congratulations, you're done.
You pardon, Madam Chair.
Okay, next on the list is Senator Surville. We have SJ 221, 226, 227, and 1104.
Just 1104.
Oh, sorry, yeah, because these other ones aren't on the docket.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, okay. So that's dramatically decreases, it's 1104. So
Right.
the committee direct your attention to Senate Bill 1104.
Right, so Senate Bill 1104 is a, I guess it's a tag along to the bill that we passed last year. I don't know if you all remember, but last year, I brought legislation that said in any school board race, nonpartisan school board race, that the candidates are to be listed in the order in which they file their petitions and not alphabetically. I thought that, and actually I have some studies I can point to show that actually people are listed at the end of the ballot because their names start with R's or S's or all the rest of you seem like high letters. It tends to prejudice the election outcome. Anyways, after we passed it, I actually got some phone calls from the Hampton Roads area asking me why we didn't include all nonpartisan elections, including town councils and city councils, et cetera, that they thought it was, some people thought it was a good point just to have in general. So that's all this bill does. It says in any nonpartisan race or for any independent candidate, the candidate will be listed on the ballot in the order they file their, get their paperwork in and not alphabetically. And I think that properly incentivizes people, rewards people for being organized and having their act together and getting their stuff in on time instead of just, I mean, right now, you know, I know people, at least in Fairfax, the school board race used to just take their time and get stuff in because it didn't mean anything. And I think if you're organized and you're act together, you have to be rewarded for that. My understanding, somebody emailed me a proposed definition of a completed application, which I didn't have a problem with, although I don't have the language with me. I'm not sure if they're back there or not, but anyways, that's what the bill does. I think it's a pretty simple bill.
Okay, is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patron? Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? We're keeping you so busy, and you're so positive. He's yet to be in opposition.
We have yet to be in opposition. We see these as all good, election-related bills. The only issue we have with SB 1104 is the definition of when the filing is made. Is it at the filing of the declaration of candidacy with all other petitions and paperwork to come in? Or is it when all apparent due filing is filed the first time? And that is the, that's actually the recommendation we made to the senator.
Madam Chair,
Senator Deeds.
it seems to me that what you're looking for is something that determines what moment you want to put in order of when they qualify for the ballot. So it's not the initial filing, but it's whenever they get their petitions and they file everything they have to file to qualify for the ballot.
Right. The definition they proposed, which again, they emailed to me, but I don't care. Oh, he's got language right here. It includes the declaration of candidacy, the petition signatures, statement of economic interest.
First draft.
Yeah, so they took a shot at it, here with some language, which we could hand up to council, I guess, but I thought it was pretty simple.
I'm going to defer to, I'm going to let council make a comment, if that's okay. Meg?
This language does come from the section we have for primaries and the determination of how they're gonna be in the ballot, so I would just suggest that this language is the same, it's gonna be the same standard that we use for that, it probably doesn't need an additional definition. That might then create a little conflict when we're trying to figure out why we have one for one type of election and one for another.
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Yes, please.
A primary election is an election for a party, and not all of the same paperwork is turned in. Some paperwork is filed with the party, some is filed with the registrar. For independent candidates for a general election, all paperwork is filed with the registrar and electoral board office. We simply needed, and we asked for this last year when the original bill for school boards was filed. We asked this of the Department of Elections to define when we can consider the filing done, because it's based on a date and time stamp. This year, we'd like the legislature to consider that, please. We think it's a good bill that avoids fistfights.
Okay, Senator Servo.
I mean, I defer to council on it, really. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, but I think clarity never hurts in these situations. You can have lawsuits develop over this kind of stuff, and so,
Is there any member of the committee who has a concern or question? Senator Chase.
Madam Chair, having personally, Senator Sherville, I appreciate this bill, but I think one of the concerns that I have, having been a part of congressional races, especially in party races, a lot of times there'll be a deadline, a specific time where you have to have all the signatures together by a certain time. And I recall waiting in line, hours and days ahead of time to get the ballots or the signatures done at a particular time. And if everyone is there at 5 o'clock, then you're back to the same issue of who is first on the ballot. And, so I'm just concerned about the complexity of how this would be determined. I personally, having been a part of 23 different elections over the past 10 years, I think this is going to kind of complicate things a little bit depending on the election. There's a lack of consistency in local, state, and federal elections that would kind of concern me. And for that reason, I'm probably going to not support this bill.
I'm sure can I address that?
Yes, please, Senator Servo.
That concern came up last year, and somebody addressed it. I mean, they have to deal with this right now, I think, sometimes. I forget, we talked about coin flips or drawing straws or something. This came up last time. And, I can tell you, at least in Fairfax, and I'm like the only site Fairfax, you have a large school board race, and they had 12 different candidates. And, there's ways to determine if everybody gets there at the same time, who goes first, who goes second, just draw straws, or pick numbers out of a hat or something. But I mean, there's pretty easy, fair ways to do that. But in terms of the definition, of when an application is complete, I leave that up to the election professionals. I think the policy is one that the committee's already passed on, thought it was a good policy. And I don't see any reason why that policy ought to only be applied to school boards and not all nonpartisan races. So.
Madam Chair,
Senator Chase.
I just think some of my concern is you have a lot of moving pieces involved with the declaration, signatures. There's multiple parts to a person declaring that they're going to run for office, and different pieces of that have to be put together. And at what point do you say that person has officially filed? When all the paperwork, and all the signatures and everything is done and it's completed by a specific date and time? My question is, is it the statement of intent? I mean, at what point?
Madam Chairman, can I read?
Senator Servo.
Sorry, can I read the proposed definition? It says, time of completed filing for office in this section shall be defined as the time all apparently complete paperwork for candidate, including a complete statement, complete declaration of candidacy, candidate qualification form, petition signature pages with signatures at least equal to the number required for office, and statement of economic interest, if needed, is initially received by the general registrar. When the provisions of the section have been met, the general registrar shall give the candidate his designated written receipt with the date, time and date of completed filing, copy of the receipts will be maintained by the registrar until the election has been certified and there are no contests been. That's their proposal. And if you want to make that amendment, make it clear, I'd be happy to accept it, and I could maybe take a screenshot of this or something and prepare it for the floor.
Madam Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Senator Howe, okay. The motion's been made, properly seconded. Does everybody understand the motion? Yes? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Cameron?
It's my service.
Oh, I'm sorry, I believe that you have stolen some of his equipment. Okay, so everybody understands what we're dealing with here. It's a question of alphabetical order versus timing of filing. Is there anybody else on the committee who has any other questions of Senator Surabel?
I think you did opposed.
Yeah, is there anybody, right, you're right. Is there, we've heard from our consistent supporter of the registrar's important legislation. Is there anybody here who is in opposition to the bill? Okay, and Mr. Howard, are you satisfied with the current
Yes,
language?
I wrote that.
That's clarified, great. Okay. I thought that was probably the case. Okay. All right, so the bill is properly before us. Is there a motion?
Move report, second.
Okay, being moved and properly seconded. All in favor of passing Senate Bill 1104, please vote aye or nay on your machine. Okay, the ayes have it and the bill passes. Oh wait, 9-0.
I made a mistake on that.
Okay, could we revote that? Once again, all in favor, please vote. Okay, Senator Surabel, your bill passes unanimously.
Thank you, see you next week.
Yep, see you next week. Okay, that concludes everybody on the sign-up sheet, and next we will hear from members of the committee, because I have not been crossing them off. Right, we have two bills that I need to take care of, and I neglected to do this at the beginning when we re-referred some of the bills. Senator Chase had asked that Senate Bill 837 please go by for the week. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll carry that over until next week. And then Senator Wexton had asked that Senate Bill 892, which dealt with absentee voting deadlines, that be stricken. And so I'm going to accept a motion that Senate Bill 892 at the request of Senator Wexton be stricken. Being moved and properly seconded, all in favor of striking Senate Bill 892, please vote aye or nay. Okay, Senate Bill 892 is stricken from the docket. And then Senator Edmund, you have Senate Bill 1236 before us. You ready for that one? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few years ago, I co-patroned Senator Black's legislation. It was following the 2012 presidential primaries, where only two candidates overcame the 10,000 signature threshold to appear on the ballot in the Republican primary. And legislation introduced afterwards in 2013 reduced the number of required signatures to 5,000. And after reducing the number of petition signatures required to gain access, we had a more robust and competitive primary in the years following, or this past year. So I looked into this and I found out that Ohio and Pennsylvania only require 5,000 signatures to qualify for the ballot for statewide office. And I thought if we're doing that for presidential candidates, we might as well do it for the other offices. And I know that at least 3 members of this committee, maybe only one on the dais, is running for statewide office or has run for statewide office. And it's my understanding that when you run for statewide office, that you often pay organizers to collect signatures. And if we want to show that people are maintaining or conducting an organized effort to the point that they should qualify for the state ballot, I'd rather they spend the money on voter contact. And I would contend that having 5,000 signatures shows that you're organized and making an effort that Virginians should take seriously. So with that, I want to reduce the number of signatures required, and that's the bill.
Okay, is there anybody in the committee who has a question for the patron? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak on behalf of this bill? Is there anybody in the audience who is opposed to the bill?
It's a very controversial piece of legislation.
Well, I would make an observation that I understand the value in making it more attainable and perhaps lowering the threshold. But I also do consider that there is an element of organization that's required and a statement of seriousness of a candidate who is organized enough to attain that number of signatures to get on the ballot. And in some ways, I think it has the ability for both parties to serve as with a higher threshold, serve as a clearinghouse, if you will, for making certain candidates are very serious. And I know ballot access, and I know we have this issue around the country. It's always a challenge to be organized enough to get the ballots, get the signatures necessary on the ballot. But I would just sort of posit that for a point of discussion. I'm not certain how my colleagues feel, but.
Madam Chair, I would
Senator
express I agree on that same, having run a number of statewide campaigns, that having a higher threshold eliminates, I'm all for competition, but we do want to get, people have expressed the ability to seriously organize, and a lot of times they actually use volunteers to get those things done as opposed to paid workers, and I think we need to continue to encourage that higher threshold so we don't end up with 20 candidates for president, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I would just observe that of the volunteers, that's what I want, is I want this to be a volunteer-based effort, not an effort where we have to pay people. And in terms of the number of candidates on the ballot, I don't agree with whatever it is they do in California, but I would note that in 2003, the gubernatorial recall election had 135 candidates on the ballot, but the top 4 candidates received 96% of the vote. So I think that 5,000 is enough, and that voters can separate out what a serious candidate is. But I think if I had to get on the ballot statewide if I was running, I would say 5,000 might be something I could do with volunteers. But I think, and I don't want to question the members of the panel, but I suspect that the members of the panel who are running for statewide office or who have ran are not getting it just with volunteers, just the way we lowered the threshold for Republican presidential candidates. And Republican and Democratic presidential candidates get a lot of publicity and tend to get volunteers. And we lowered it for them to qualify, assuming that they could show they're serious with just 5,000 signatures. So in a race that is less high profile, whether it's for AG, LG, or, I guess Senate and Governor might be different. But I think that 5,000 is a volunteer type obtainable goal, where 10,000 is just not.
Is there any member of the committee who wishes to offer any?
I'm going to make a motion
About
for
what?
PDI.
I'll make a substitute motion to report.
Okay. Motion has been made, substitute motion has been made to report and properly seconded. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 1236, please vote aye. No, same sign. Senator Reeves made a good point. Do I need to rule 36 that?
It wouldn't affect the current election.
Right, okay, good. Okay. So it passes 5-4. Okay. Congratulations, Senator Ruffin. I think with that, I will turn the chair over to Senator Reeves. Janet, okay.
Okay, the committee will bring your attention to Senate Bill 1302, Sir Local.
Actually, Mr. Chair, not to complicate things, but I'm going to start off with the simplest, and that's 1304, if that's okay, to get this one out of the way. Senate Bill 1304, which deals with the local option for timing of municipal elections and the effective date. This is a subject that is not new to this committee. We have dealt with this issue before, and I think many of you might be aware of an issue that arose in Charlottesville, but this is simply a very technical change to make sure that there are no concerns about any previous elections. And so, without belaboring this too much and going through the history too much, in 2000, there was language that was passed by the General Assembly to allow localities to change the date of their local elections without having to come to the General Assembly each time to ask for a change to their charter. The issue then is that the legislation that was passed by the General Assembly was passed without the language that said notwithstanding any charter provision. So it later arose in the case in Charlottesville where someone raised the fact that without this language, the change, the local ordinance passed by the locality was technically not correct, was inconsistent with the law. And so this is simply a cleanup now to come back and clarify the issue that existed before. And then this cleans it up to make it retroactive to 2000 because the argument was then made that all of those local elections were now improper. And so we would like to just make that very technical clarification here so that this issue can now be resolved. So that's what Senate Bill 1304 seeks to do.
Any members of the committee have a question? Anybody wish to speak in favor of the bill? You have someone behind you, sir.
Hi, I'm Mary Jo Fields with the Virginia Municipal League, and we appreciate the Senator putting this bill in. And this is the intent of the original legislation, and anyway, it is technical, as the Senator said. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the bill? All right, the bill's before the committee. Bill's properly before the committee. It's been seconded. All those in favor, vote aye. Unanimous. Your next bill, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next bill is, I'm going to do Senate Bill 1303. And this bill was presented to me by some of our registrars who, as many of you who followed the most recent election closely, there were issues with the online portal. And so, as you know now, the registration deadline is 5 p.m. unless you're working through the portal, in which case it was midnight. So if all of your opportunities to register in person with the registrar or any other of the local registration locations around the Commonwealth of Virginia, if your deadline had passed at 5 p.m. and then you were someone who chose to go to the online portal and there was an issue with the portal, you were left without any other options. You were frozen out. And so one of the solutions that has been offered is to set a uniform deadline of 5 p.m. across the board. That way, should you have an issue at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the online portal, you would have some other opportunity to go and register somewhere else in another location. And so that's what this bill does. It just makes it uniform, 5 p.m. across the board. And I believe we have some folks here to speak to this.
Okay. Any member have a question for Senator Vogel? Anybody in the audience wants? Senator Howe.
I did have an observation. I thought one of the things that caused the portal to crash was all the people who wanted to register after 5 o'clock, after dinner, whenever was convenient. So this would then take away that opportunity?
That's the flip side of this. What you're doing is you're narrowing the opportunity between 5 o'clock and midnight. So what you would have created is an arbitrary deadline that would have been sooner, that would have created the opportunity for someone who had an issue with the portal to still have some window in time in which they could have done something else. Because if you got closed out during that window, you were left without any other option. So it's really just a question for this committee to decide. Is there, in your mind, more value in leaving that opportunity after 5 p.m.? Or do you wish to do what some of the registrars have requested, which is to make that registration uniform at 5 p.m. And therefore there is clarity and there is some expectation that if you have a challenge, you might have the opportunity to register a different way. Because if it really mattered to you and it was the middle of the afternoon, if you knew you had 5 o'clock as your deadline. So, but there will always be people like me, Senator Howe, foul, who do things at the last minute, and so.
That's, I'm one of those people too.
Right.
And, you know, the other alternative, Mr. Chairman, would be for the registrars to be available till midnight.
Right, and I know that Mr. Howard and the Registrars Association is gonna stand up and vigorously support that uniformity, because we all believe in uniformity, so I'll go with 5 p.m. or I'll go with midnight. Because I can just as easily drive up to Warrenton at 11 o'clock at night after I put the kids to bed. So I'm happy with either one.
Senator Deeds, you have,
I was just, Mr. Chair, I just wondered if anybody had any idea how many people there were that tried to register between 5 o'clock and midnight this past year.
is there someone here?
So, Mr. Chair, I'm gonna defer to some of the really smart people who are here in the audience who I know were supportive of the bill and might be able to speak to some of these questions that I cannot answer. Is there anybody who wishes to
Somebody
speak?
from the Department of Elections might be.
Is there anybody here? Carlos here? They're hiding in the back.
Hey, Gerdo, where have you been the whole time? Gosh.
Mr. Chairman, we do not, for the issue that we had on the registration deadline this year, because the system was down, we don't have a sense of how many people attempted during that time frame. Can tell you, there were over 20,000 people in that last 24-hour span that applied to register. And we do have pretty considerable amount of people that come on the registration deadline, not just through the portal, but through all the other methods. But there is a lot of activity that does occur on the deadline day, up until and sometimes past the deadline. People are still submitting, and those don't count, but those don't get counted towards the deadline.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Deeds.
do we have any idea the number of people that complained that they were trying to register between 5 and midnight and didn't?
So, Mr. Chairman, we do not have, we don't have any concrete numbers for how many folks attempted during that time frame and did not.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Evans.
if I could ask Mr. Cortez, are most of the local registrars, or all of them, do they all close at 5 p.m.?
Mr. Chairman, all the registrar's offices on the registration cutoff date have to close registration at 5. So that's a uniform deadline that's already in the code.
But if I could follow up, are their offices typically open past 5 p.m.?
There are some across the state, yes, that are open, but in terms of the registration deadline, the in-person cutoff is 5 p.m. currently in the code.
So they might be open and working, but not taking registration paperwork. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. So this year, for instance, we had some that were open and were doing absentee voting still. They had evening hours for absentee voting, but we're not able to do in-person registrations after 5.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else wish to speak to the bill? Okay, come on up, sir.
Apologize for coming up so many times, but there's so many good bills this time. We do like this bill because of the uniformity. 5 p.m. deadline is throughout the code based on the closing of the registrar's offices throughout Virginia. Registration paperwork, absentee ballot paperwork, all of that is due at 5 p.m. on the deadline. We like this for the simpleness and the uniformity of it.
Thank you. Okay, the bill's before the committee.
Mr. Chairman,
1 second. Senator Evans.
you want a motion first before we discuss it, or?
Is it gonna affect the outcome? I'll take the motion then, Senator Chapin. We have a motion report, seconded.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to observe, we're in an online world now, and it's convenient to register online, and I presume that the results are better than getting a handwritten form in the mail. And the one thing that troubles me is if you have a problem at 4:59 p.m., it's the same effect as if you had a problem at 11:59 p.m. I know that elections was, that there's money in the budget, I believe, the governor's budget, I hope will accept, to fix what's called Veris. So I don't know that this solves the problem of having the same thing happen at 11:59 p.m., not happen at 4:59, in terms of people being able to correct any issue.
We have a motion for the body, let's go ahead and vote. Okay, we've got 9 yeas, 1 nay, your bill reports. You have one more bill, Senator?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. I have Senate Bill 1302, and there is a substitute.
Senator Howell motions and Senator Chapin seconds the substitute before us. All those in favor of the substitute say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the substitute's before us, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What this bill seeks to do, and again, I bring this also at the request of some of our registrars. This is, in my view, a good government bill that is simply seeking to reduce the amount of kind of gratuitous and unnecessary paperwork at a time when some of our registrars are under a crushing amount of pressure to do other jobs. And in this case, it has to do with write-in candidates. When no one wins an election as a write-in, the electoral board, in this case, would only have to report the total number of write-ins cast and not the individual identity of each person. In a case where it is mathematically impossible for the write-in voter to win. That's basically what the bill does, and there's a threshold here, and I'll let our Fairfax registrar speak to that in greater detail. But that's essentially what this is trying to do, and there's an important critical piece here that I know people will immediately ask about, which is very fair, which is transparency. What if you want to know, in Fairfax County, for example, if there were 27,000, or maybe, I think it was 32,000, write-in, maybe? Something like that, that were cast. If you wanted to know the identity of each write-in, you have a way to do that. You can actually go and request that information. It just wouldn't require them to produce that in such a voluminous amount of information.
Mr. Chair,
Senator,
if the votes that are cast cannot make a difference, you don't count them, is that what you're saying?
No, just to clarify, they would be counted. So in other words, there would be 27,000 write-in votes. That would be how it would be counted. But then what you would not require the registrar to do is list the identity of all 27,000. Go through each one and say, John Smith, Mickey Mouse, Abe Lincoln, and so on.
So, Mr. Chair, they would be counted, but they wouldn't count for the candidate that was written in.
Right, they would not count for
You wouldn't identify, you wouldn't have a list of, say, Mickey Mouse got 6 votes and Donald Duck got 9.
Right, and it would be available, but they wouldn't be required to produce that in that time frame. And I'm gonna let our Fairfax County registrar speak to that.
Senator Bolden, thank you. Mr. Chairman, in Fairfax County, the 11th Congressional District, which also expanded into Prince William County, this past November, did have 32,000 write-ins for an unopposed congressional candidate. Means the week following the election, we had to report out 32,000 names of those write-ins. Now, those 32,000 write-ins were a complete total of 12% of the vote cast for that office, which will not make a difference at all in whether or not that candidate won or whether or not any of those write-in candidates would be eligible to participate or request in a recount. So currently under 24.2-800, a write-in candidate would be allowed to request a recount so long as the margin of victory for a write-in candidate was less than 5% of the total votes cast between a winning candidate and that candidate. So this bill with the language that was offered as a substitute actually narrows that down so the language more closely aligns with the language in 24.2-800 so that anybody who actually has a write-in campaign still has the opportunity to request one. Simply reduces the burden and the staff time which would be required for doing something such as writing out Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck. There were a few legitimate write-ins, however, it would not make a difference. Now, just so for the purposes of open government, we do retain all of those names on the ballot image tapes that are still available in our office that we retained for a period of time after the election. And anybody who wishes to look at those and wants to know who those write-ins were cast for, because we did report the total number, would have the ability to come to the office. Be happy to sit down with them and show them all the tapes. It just reduces the significant amount of time, 5 days, a total of 8 people, 10 hours a day after the election, while we're doing provisionals, while we're trying to get all the canvassing done. So it allows us to focus more appropriately on certifying the election.
real quick, how many people and how many days did it take today?
We allocated, we had 8 people, working 5 days, as soon as we identified the number and got our tapes to those people, we had them working 10 hours a day to go through those tapes. 243 precincts, in addition, we also had our absentee precincts. So we had a total of 600 machines, 600 machine tapes, approximately 20 to 30 write-ins were cast for that race. So we had to go through those tapes, actually identify the names, look at the names, put them into a database. We reported that, consolidated the identical names, and reported it up to the Department of Elections so they can combine them with all of them. So all of that manual work to actually go through, look at a tape, type it into a computer, and then report it. And again, today we're not trying to do anything other than reduce the amount of time and staff that ultimately does not result in changing the outcome of the election. Again, the information is still going to be available as well as the total number is still going to be reported.
Thank you. Anyone else? Virginia?
Yeah, I'm Virginia Jordan from Orange County, and my understanding is that this is for all elections, not just say the presidential one, which I can imagine that was a real headache. But for the smaller counties, which I'm from, as opposed to the very large, only few, it reflects something to be able to say that there were write-in votes for a certain candidate. And yes, you can go, according to this bill, you can go and look it up and find out the information. But sometimes there's a real statement that is made by a write-in candidate occurring, which may just come up in the last minute because of something that's happened. And I just think, I'm very sorry for Fairfax. I can imagine that was an enormous headache. But I think that for the rest of the state, of the Commonwealth, that this is not a wise thing to do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry.
If I might ask a different question, in Alexandria, I think it was last year, we had a campaign for mayor where we had a Republican nominee, a Democratic nominee, and then the sitting mayor ran as an independent. And I believe he got thousands and thousands of votes. He clearly finished behind the second place candidate, but I don't know if it was in the tens of thousands or thousands, but it was pretty significant. And under this bill, if I understand properly, we wouldn't know, it wouldn't be easy for the press or for others to know how many votes he got versus someone else. He ran as a write-in, so we wouldn't know how many votes he actually got, even though there were thousands and thousands. Is that right?
Mr. Chair, that's accurate. That's accurate. It would not be reported by the registrar, and it would require some good government group or candidate or the press to actually go and obtain that information. And I sympathize with the comments from the registrar from Orange, in the sense that I get that there's an extraordinary difference between how much more rural localities manage elections versus someplace like Fairfax County, which is just extraordinary. So there is an option that might make sense if the committee would want to entertain this, and that would say that instead of shall only, maybe it would be may, because then that would allow it would be discretionary. Now, again, that might not get at your underlying issue, but in a case like Fairfax County, where it was, an uncontested election, and that amount of manpower was required for that amount of days, it just does seem to me to be an extraordinary waste of government resources and time when there was so much other election-related work to be done in Fairfax County. So I have real sympathy with our large jurisdictions, and we understand the issues that they face being incredibly short-handed at these election times. So that would be at least something that the committee could consider, and that would be a discretionary component.
You know where you put a may, where the may and shall is second component?
Mr. Chair.
Comment
before we discuss it further.
Yes, please. Again, Tracy Howard, President of the Registrars Association of Virginia. There's not a registrar in the Commonwealth that doesn't like this bill. The reason that they like this bill is because when the tapes are printed from our machines, every write-in name is already there and recorded on the tapes. It's there in perpetuity as part of the election result. electoral board to have to decipher those names the following day, sometimes hundreds. Senator Chafin, during your special election, it was decided that somebody would run a write-in campaign. That write-in campaign made no difference, but we had an abstract that was more than 4 pages long of differing names for people who just simply decided to write themselves in. It is a time consumer for the electoral board, which makes it a time consumer for the registrar, because the registrar ends up doing that electoral board's task of compiling, alphabetizing, listing, and enumerating those names. For the county of Fairfax, they may have had 8 individuals. In the city of Radford, it's me. For most of Southwest Virginia, it's the registrar. This is time consuming. It does take a lot of effort, energy, and money. So we hope you will consider supporting this bill.
So, Mr. Chair, I may have misspoken. Every registrar must be supporting this bill.
Excuse me, I'd like to clarify that I'm
Not the registrar. Yes, I know, I misspoke. She's not the registrar from Orange. I knew the registrar is from Orange.
And also to say that maybe the word that could be changed or would be to add that in uncontested elections, that this would be the case, as opposed to making, the may would be discretionary on whose part, the registrar.
Senator DeStefano?
I have a motion when it's time.
Okay.
I think we're probably ready for a motion.
Will that we report?
So,
I was gonna ask a parliamentary question. Have we moved that amendment of changing shall to may?
no, we haven't. It's
No.
still sitting as it is.
And Mr. Chair, if I may,
Senator Dees?
listening to that, the president of the Registrar Association, I'm not sure that amendment
That
makes a
fixes it.
difference.
Correct.
I think
That's true.
if we give them the opportunity to, not tabulate or not count up all these, all these write-in votes, are not gonna do it.
And could I also just make a point of clarification, something that is probably relevant to the discussion, and that is when you actually go back and count those write-in ballots, many, in fact, often cases, the majority of them are just listed as invalid, because if they write in Mickey Mouse or Abraham Lincoln, that's actually not, delineated separately. So, much of that work is really just invalid, so. anyway.
Senator Sherman, did you have a follow-on question?
I think the point that Senator Dees made was correct, and so having the may probably does not make a difference in the outcome.
Okay. So, Senator DeStefano, you had a motion. Is there a
I'd like to
second?
renew my motion, which is I move we report the original bill as it was presented. I'm sorry, as
The
the
substitute.
substitute was presented and adopted by the committee.
So Senator DeStefano gives the motion, Senator Chase seconded, committee will now vote.
Mr. Chairman, just speaking briefly to this.
Sure, go ahead, Senator.
I just want to point out, elections are not easy to administer, and I have a lot of sympathy with people in the audience who are up for 15 or 16 hours on election day. But as long as we allow write-in votes, to some degree, we need to report them. And I looked it up, the former mayor of Alexandria got 34.8% of the vote, and the current mayor got, of course, the winning percentage. But there was a percentage of people who didn't vote for either, who I don't, those are probably your Mickey Mouse voters and so forth. So right now, we're saying that 5%, you don't get reported if it's 5% of the total. I wouldn't have heartburn if it's at 7% or if it's at 10% of uncontested, but I think not allowing the public to easily know if someone got 20% of the vote or 30% who they are is a bit of a disservice. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So the bill's before the committee. It's been properly, motioned for us. It's been seconded. Please vote. So the bill passed, 7 yes, 3 nays. Your bill is done.
Thank
Do
you,
you have another one?
Mr. Chair, and members of the committee, that's it. Includes the docket, is that correct? Thank you, nothing left on the docket? Okay. So the committee will rise.